What's up everybody, another beautiful day indeed, Dragon Owls, and we're back with some more Mythic raid guides. Today we're taking a look at Mythic Kurog Grimtotem. Now I'll be going over most of the mechanics, how to deal with them, and our overall tactic for this fight. Setup wise, you want 2 tanks, 5 healers, and 13 DPS. On Mythic, this is mainly a 2-target cleave fight, so builds and spec that works well for that is to be preferred, like Arms Warrior over Fury, etc, etc. Now this is for all intents and purposes a throughput fight, both healing and DPS wise. With that said, what's new for Grimtotem on Mythic? The biggest change to the fight is that on Mythic, each elemental altar will spawn an additional ad, just like the one you get during Intermission. Now each ad has its own ability, as well as the same tank frontal the boss uses. So on the fire side of lives, you get the Flame Rot Eradicator. He uses Flame Smite like Kurog, and he will empower the magma pools that Kurog spawns with Raging Inferno, which makes the pools soakable, but after 15 seconds, each pool will spawn a Hellion ad. Hellion? On the Frost side, you get the Frost Rot Dominator. Cast Frost Smite and Frigid Torrent, same as boss, you're going to need to dodge projectiles from both boss and ad during this. This ad also brings in the Icy Tempest, which is if a player is not within 10 yards of at least 2 other players, they will get frozen solid after a bit. So cuddle up. In the Earth ad, you have Earth Smite, Erupting Bedrocks. You'll need to dodge circles from both ad and boss, and tanks will get a really fun healing absorb both from ad and boss. Beware. And on the Storm side, the ad casts Storm Smite and Orb Lightning, which requires you to chase and soak orbs. However, with this strat, you will never fight this ad. So who cares? Now on top of this, during the Intermission, the elemental ads will all use Kurog's big ability from their elemental side from phase 1. So the Fire ad will cast Searing Carnage, Frosty ad Absolute Zero, Earth ad Seismic Rupture, which is the swirls that spawns ad, and the Thunder ad cast Thunder Strike, which are the lightning circles that you need to soak. Now apart from this, everything else just hurts a metric ton more than it does on Heroic, and the way you play this fight on Mythic to make it easier also makes it hurt way more on the raid. So healers, be ready to pad. Now with that said, how do we deal with all of this? Just heal forehead? Now due to the extra ad you get for each elemental altar you connect your Grimtotem to, now this strat revolves around skipping 1 ad per phase 1 by simply keeping the boss on one side for the majority of first phase 1 and all of second phase 1. However, you still want to be able to choose what ads you get during your first intermission, so you don't get one ad of your choice and a random one, as some of them do not overlap nice. Now to do this, you'll be keeping boss on one side until it hits exactly 96 energy and then instantly pull it over to another elemental altar side, for example Thunder, and doing so will make the boss register that, "Hi, you've activated Fundicide." But since you dragged it there at 96 energy, the Thunder ad will not have time to spawn before Intermission is triggered, so you'll still get Thunder ad during Intermission without having to deal with it during phase 1. Big brain. So first phase 1, Fire altar to 96 energy, then move over to Thunder side. Second phase, you stay at Earth side the entire time. Then you start on the Frost side for last phase and keep it there until boss is dead. Easy enough. Now for the rest of the guide. Now first of all, your damage prio should be boss, boss, and some more boss, and you cleave down the ad. Now that might not actually be enough to kill it, and if so, you want to assign just a few DPS to nuke it down or some to swap to it once it's lower. Like we had 2 Arms Warriors that both swapped to the ads when they were in execute range, because not only did the ad die faster, but they could sweeping strike execute and things like that. And this is mainly because you don't want to kill the ads instantly. They are extremely manageable up until the enraged, and then they're not. So there's no point in nuking him to high heaven unless the enrage. Cue the picture! Now on pull, you want to drag boss to the fire side and have 4 raid marks up like you see here. And then you want all range plus range healers stack on the blue mark to bait the first magma puddles. After these magma pools, range moves to the green marker for the next bait. And when the fire ad casts Raging Inferno, you need a player with immunity to soak up all the puddles on blue mark. Tanks will work in a pinch if you don't have access to enough immunes, but they will take a lot of damage, so immunes are a lot better. After the pool bait on green, instantly move into melee with boss for your first Searing Carnage. We had the rules: if you're targeted, run out to the right; if you're safe, run to the left. And there's weakauras that'll show you if you're targeted or not. Melee, we had go to the right side of the boss regardless, but do move slowly so you don't bait fire in front of the rest of the melee. Now it takes a long time from the swirl spawning to actually hitting the ground, so don't stress too much. Survive. Now following the first Searing Carnage, range stacks on purple mark to bait magma pools, and then bait on moon after that. Then you get your second Searing Carnage, and the fire ad should die during this second Carnage or right before. And then you want to bait one more time on moon, and following this bait, tank should move boss next to the storm side area, and just as the boss goes from 95 to 96 energy, you jump over. I recommend using some kind of mobility to make this faster, like Infernal Strike, Heroic Leap. You just need to get there fast. Now if you spawn the Thunder ad, you failed. And if Intermission starts and you don't get fire and Thunder ad, you failed. And you might as well just wipe it up. Now keep in mind that since you're tanking Grimtotem here until 96 energy, the dominance ticks will be brutal by the end of it, like 150k ticks or so. Either way, it slaps, so have cooldowns and defensive setup for this, and DPSers be liberal with defensive cooldowns here. You won't need them during Intermission, so rather just use it when you have high dominance stacks. Make sure to have immunities for all the magma pool soaks, and then it's time for Intermission. So the first Intermission, you get Storm and Fire ad. At the start of the phase, everyone stacks up near the Storm ad, so it doesn't jump too far. It seems to mostly want to teleport to healers, so keep that in mind. Full focus on Storm ad, and if you get targeted by lethal current, you run out. If you're melee, position yourself on one side and the rest of them needs to move a bit. You could communicate this via the voice comms. Now for the first Searing Carnage during Intermission, we slowly backpedal from where the ads are into the middle of the room where Grimtotem is. A few seconds after this Carnage, you will get Thunderstrike from the Storm ad. Ranged DPS should soak these, not healers, since you ideally don't want the ad to teleport away far. So ranged DPS on these, then stack up near ads again for your second Searing Carnage. This one can be a bit chaotic since it starts just as the Thunderstrike soaks ends. You're not able to fully stack. Plus the Thunder ad will teleport during it, meaning people will autopilot run towards it and there's flames everywhere. So healers should try to be near the big ads during this Carnage so the Thunder ad doesn't teleport too far away. And pretty much everyone can run with ads during Carnage except the ranged DPS that soak the Thunderstrike circles, unless they happen to be very close to the ads when it starts. Otherwise they can just slowly move away from the ads or to their side. Just don't put swirlies in front of them because melee gets sad. One thing to keep in mind though is never kite ads to the earth side during Intermission, as you don't want any magma pools to spawn there. Now as soon as the Carnage ends, finish off the Thunder ad and start smacking down the Fire ad. For your third Carnage, you can kite ad kind of wherever, just not onto the earth side. And as far as kill timings goes, you can milk this phase a bit to get cooldowns back for phase 2, because you really want to go into phase 2 with all or most of your DPS cooldowns ready, which also means you shouldn't commit DPS cooldowns during Intermission unless they'll for sure be up when phase 2 starts, or like a few seconds after. Due to this, we let the ad enrage and kill it during the fourth Searing Carnage, and tank pops one of them little defensives to survive it. So the ad dies around the 3:35 mark, give or take a few seconds, and then phase 2 starts like 10 seconds later when the ad spawns. There's one more thing that's important to do for the end of Intermissions. When Grimtotem goes active again, you want to pull him next to the earth side from the middle, then stop for like a second before pulling him over to the earth side. Doing this will offset ad and boss erupting bedrock cast, which makes them a lot easier to deal with. So after you've done this, the order you're going to get for erupting bedrock in this phase is first boss, then ad, then boss and ad at roughly the same time, and then boss alone. So as soon as you get to the earth side, start nuking down boss and cleave ad. Dodge the rings from boss and then ad. During the ads erupting bedrock, boss will spawn the ad swirlies. And I'll say this now, and if you're a raid leader, repeat this to your raid: the swirls area is bigger than the animation. Don't greed, don't min-max by standing just outside. Be safe, move. When these ads spawns, tanks be aware of this overlap, because both tanks will get frontaled, one from ad, one from boss, and the absorbs they apply to tanks are huge. And if you're not a DK or DH that can just self-heal, you're going to need heavy cooldowns here, because boss slaps hard, big ad slaps, and all the small ad slaps. Plus, gargantuan healing absorb. But yeah, ad spawns, AoE them down on boss and big ad, and a few seconds before your second erupting bedrock, whichever tank is currently tanking the big ad needs to move it away from boss to make the erupting bedrock easier, as they tend to cast these at roughly the same time, or like with a second in between. So keep them separated and dodge the circle. Boss usually starts erupting and then ad, so we usually dodge from boss towards the ad. And then once this ends, all DPS swap to the big ad and focus it down. And at this point, boss will have around 20 stacks of earth, meaning the dominance ticks are massive. So we had the rule, if you get the healing absorb on you at this point in the fight, you healing pot or health stone the first one and then the same on the next one. So don't use both on one absorb, split them up and also self heal if you can or if it's needed. The absorb is almost 500,000 and the dominance ticks for like 150k. And shortly after this, you'll get new ads into another erupting bedrock. We try to always kill the big ad just as the new small ads spawned, or shortly after during. Finish up the ads, then you survive. Legit, only thing that happens is erupting bedrock and dominance ticks. However, these dominance ticks are brutal to say the least, and you're going to lose players here if they aren't prepared. So as soon as you're safe from dodging these circles, just make sure to survive. Call for externals if you don't have a defensive, self-heal if you can, pray to the almighty space lizard. Just stay grounded on the earthy side until boss runs into the middle. Now during this, you get Earth Ad, which spawns smaller earthy ads, and the frosty boy that casts absolute zero. So for this, there's a few things that you should do. First of all, Earth Ad will always target the 3 nearest players with ground shatter, which are the massive circles. So you should always try to have your most mobile slash tanky classes to cuddle dead center under the earthy ad before ground shatter cast. Since we had a Vengeance Demon Hunter and Prot Warrior, we tried to always get it on them and then one extra mobile DPS. But the next important thing here is the absolute zero, which just so happened to be my nickname in high school. Now just like on Heroic, you want to place one in melee, or in this case in front of the frost ad, since that's the one you'll be killing first. And then the other one more in range around the earth ad, just avoid overlapping the circle. Now here's the kicker though, you want 2 players that have immunity to not soak any of these. Doing so will leave them without a debuff, and the next time you get absolute zero, it will always target those 2 players who are then free to just run out and immune. And this is mainly because Raid can't soak 2 in a row without becoming popsicles, so having 18 soak it and then the 2 immune it, you just skip one and nobody has to become a popsicle. Lastly, the big earth ad should die right before it spawns its second set of ads. However, even if you do happen to get him, it's not the end of the world. Stack him up on boss and cleave him down. I mean, think of the... So, for the final phase, you want to drag boss into the frost side, and again, you want to stop right before the frost side, wait a second, and then drag boss over to offset their frigid torrent casts. So as soon as phase starts, full nuke on boss, ignore the ad completely, don't waste a global on it unless it increases your boss damage. You will not be killing this ad at all, it is just a burn phase for the boss before the enrage kicks in and everyone dies. For absolute zero here, the first one everyone can soak, since the second one happens around the time the boss enrages, so you'll sacrifice them anyways. However, if the first absolute zero happens to go on a player with immune ready, then they should just run out an immune to help the raid. When frigid torrent starts, step back and look at the projectiles. It is easy to get stressed out here, especially as melee, but keep in mind that the animation will change as soon as the projectile is dangerous, so as he spawns them, they're safe to run over. Then like half a second or a second later, he fires them out, they change animation and they will now freeze and damage you. So if you're in melee, just look where it spawns, move into the gap. Don't need to run out, don't have to dodge, even if it spawns on you, just move to the side. And before the second set of frigid torrents, just like the bedrock, you want to split ad and boss a bit to make dodging easier. I can confirm their area is bigger than their animation as well. Now, whichever tank runs out with the ad, keep in mind you'll get frozen after a bit if you don't have 2 additional players with you, so either have a way to break stuns, or be fast with moving ad out then move into melee with boss. You can potentially send 2 healers or something with the tank to keep him from getting popsicled if needed. Otherwise, it's cool. And yeah, that's pretty much it as far as the strat goes. The final phase, like I said, is just a burn phase, so again, you want to go into that phase with cooldowns ready, use second combat pot here and nuke a win. Anyway, a few final things. Like I mentioned earlier, this is a throughput fight. The healing requirement is huge, as well as the DPS check. And the amount of damage the tanks takes is pretty bonkers as well, so make sure to coordinate raid cooldowns, defensives, and things like that. Don't be afraid to off-heal every now and then, assign health stones or healing pots like we did for the absorbs during Earth phase. Anything to live it. Heck, I even use healing stream totem. And yeah, that's pretty much it for Mythic Grimtotem. Let me know what you think about this fight on Mythic. And if you have any questions at all about this encounter, hit me up in the comments or become a patron or Twitch sub and get access to the Stankie Discord, where you can get help with anything raiding related, and it's filled with a ton of awesome people. I'm also streaming all of my raid progression on Twitch, so make sure to check that out. Stankie Gaming. And don't forget the usual stuff, like, comment, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. It really helps me out. And yeah, thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.